You're listening to Pep Talk with your hosts Rob Rave and Dr. Mark.
So welcome to Pep Talk for Founders. My name is Rob Rave. I'm the creator of Flip Performance. And I'm also the host of this show, which is sponsored by Cambridge Applied Research. Cambridge Applied Research is a leader in AI investment and incubation for founders. And with Pep Talk, we are talking about people, engagement and performance. And my guest today is Dr. Mark McCurgo. Welcome, Dr. Mark.
Hello there, Rob. Hello, everybody. Great to be with you again.
Fantastic. Now, Dr. Mark is an author of 6 books, including Host, which I thoroughly recommend, is a great book for founders. And it's a good book for founders because it's about working in complex and often challenging contexts, which is exactly what many founders operate in. And also joining us on the podcast is Chris Sahill from Funky Bear Productions, who is producing the show. And welcome, Chris.
Yeah, welcome, everybody. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. And today's session, we're going to be talking about, can people be fixed or reprogrammed? And I'm going to come straight out of the gate and say, for me, that this metaphor is a wrong metaphor, in the sense that the minute or moment we start talking about fixing or programming people, we've already misunderstood what a human being is by comparing them and creating a metaphor about machines and people. But that's my view. Mark, what's your view about can people be fixed or reprogrammed?
So I'm right with you, Rob, here. I think there's a dangerous thing. If we start talking about fixing someone, it's as if they're like a washing machine or something like that. We fix washing machines, and that's a good thing. But we can't fix people in the same way that we fix a washing machine. And there's a crucial distinction to make here, I think, is that a washing machine, you're working on it from outside it, and it doesn't really mind what you do. If you shout at the washing machine, it doesn't mind. Right? It doesn't really change anything. It may change you and make you feel better, but it doesn't change the washing machine if you shout at it. If you shout at a person, it does change them, and it probably doesn't do any good. So the difficulty with thinking about fixing someone is that we are assuming they are a kind of inert object that we can tinker with, whereas actually they're not. They're an active agent in their own lives. They're somebody who has their own hopes and aspirations and interests and worries and concerns and life experiences. And that is the vital driver for them. Now, if we're going to help them perform better, which we certainly can do, then that's where we need to start, not by thinking about, we just need to fix them or even reprogram them. I don't think that's an ethical way to work. I don't think it's a very humane way to work either.
No, and I agree. It just seems crazy that every time I read something, we've almost become, nobody seems to challenge programming and this use of language. I wonder why that is.
I think it's because people would wish it was the case. Right. They would love to be able to reprogram people, just in the same way that you can reprogram your computer or your phone or hack your games console, but you can't. So I understand that people would love to be able to do that, and therefore they might be interested to try and read things about it that hint that might be possible. But I don't think it is. And even if it was, I think changing people without their consent takes us into dangerous territory and difficult waters. So we need to be thinking about, how do we engage people in wanting to be better, and rather than thinking of fixing them or reprogramming them.
And when you say it that way, Mark, there's this sort of notion of doing something to someone versus doing something with someone, meaning you can have a conversation with someone versus commanding them to change.
Yeah. Well, of course, you can try commanding them to change, and it might even work for a bit. But I don't think that's really going to produce a long-term result. And if it does produce a long-term result, that person has no imagination, and probably you don't want them working for you anyway in the long run. So thinking about how we engage people and how we make them want to be better is the vital starting point. Because if they want to be better or do things a bit differently or use their strengths in a different way, then we're off to the races. That's a potentially very useful thing to be doing.
Yes, I remember when I started off in my early career, I was lucky. I came across something called the inner game of tennis, where it essentially their idea was you always look for what's of interest to the person. What are they noticing that's interesting to them, that engages them, and building from that engagement?
Absolutely, and that's really vital. It's because sometimes people aren't performing at work, and that happens, of course. Sometimes they it's as simple as they don't know what good performance looks like. They have no idea what would be a good result, or they're not noticing some of the things that we think are important. And so how to engage with people to kind of refocus their attention is a great way to start. And we were talking about attention last time, of course, which is the founder's attention. But now maybe we can start to think about how we as founders and managers and leaders, we can help other people focus their attention in the direction of better performance, which means better performance for them and for us and for the organisation.
I don't know if it was you or I've got this phrase that might be from you, but I'm not sure. But it's conversations are an underutilized organisational tool. Don't know where I got it from. Might have been you, Mark, might not.
I'm not sure it was exactly from me, but I recognise the sentiment. And here's the thing. Organisations, we think of them as like org charts, with grids and lines, and this person reports to that person, and that person's responsible for that area, and they're doing this other thing over here. Actually, organisations aren't like that at all. They're much more fluid. And organisations are a group of people organising themselves. And the primary mode of organisation is conversations. That's what happens. That's how we know what's going on. That's how we know what's important. That's how we know how we're doing. It all comes through conversations. Now, maybe there's a bit of text coming through your device and emails arriving and stuff, but these are just other forms of conversations. They all happen in language. And so thinking about how are we... Thinking about the organisation as a fixed thing isn't terribly helpful. The more helpful thing is how are we organising ourselves? Because that starts to focus the light and focus the attention on how are we actually going about this business of organising, coordinating, communicating, prioritising, updating, and making progress together. Because that's really at the heart what an organisation is. It's an ongoing set of conversations. And so changing the conversations...
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say it's living systems versus a bunch of machines talking to each other.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a very, very live system, and small changes in conversations can have quite dramatic impacts in the long or indeed the short term. So we need to be careful about the conversations and make sure they're focusing on useful things, which are usually things to do with progress, as you like to say about progress focus. And they're things to do with what people can do and what they can do well and how they're contributing and how they might contribute more or differently or whatever.
And when we think about engagement and performance, what are some ideas that can serve a leader to encourage that sort of engagement, that performance when they've not had any training? Most tech founders haven't had any people training or leadership training. Where could they start with this?
Well, I think one of the places to start is, what does good performance look like? What are we expecting? What are we hoping for from our people? And have those conversations, because sometimes people, founders, leaders assume that everybody shares their idea of what good performance looks like. And my experience is that's not often the case. We all have our own different ideas and our own different ways of working. And so you can focus on what are people doing badly and start to kind of upbraid them for that. But you can also focus on what people are doing well and encourage them to do more of that. And that's usually the path of much less resistance. People don't like trying to be fixed, but they'll respond to an invitation to make more of a contribution. And that might be because through understanding what a good contribution looks like, or it might be an understanding of how can they do that, how can they utilize their own special set of skills, experience, talents, strengths, and whatever to contribute more in ways that would be useful to everybody else. And that, of course, means we have to start making people aware or helping them become aware of what are these skills, strengths, talents, and experiences that they have, particularly things they have other people may not have, and how can that be brought into use to help the whole organization forward?
Yes, and I think often in my day-to-day with founders, I seem to get involved in conversations that are very clever, very logical, very analytical, but are quite confusing because my idea of improved performance and yours, it hasn't been taken to the level of, so I'll be doing this and I'll be doing that. They're very conceptual, or they're inside their heads. They're not behaviorally demonstrated or expressed. So there's this sort of assumption that you mean this and I mean this, but they haven't broken it down into really, really simple terminology.
Yeah, one of the ways I like to think about that is the difference between $5,000 words and $5 words. And $5,000 words are really long and impressive and multisyllabic. I like multisyllabic. And they sound good across the conference table. They sound good on the Zoom call. I want everybody to be fully empowered on this project. And now that sounds great, but what does it mean? And in order to really get an understanding of what it means, we have to unpack it into $5 words. And $5 words are very, very ordinary, everyday, kind of one-syllable often words about who's doing what, with whom and when, and how they're doing it. And it sometimes feels, I think, as people feel a bit of a failure if they have to find that they have to start talking about things in $5 words. But actually, folks, it means you're being a very good leader if you do that, because you are bringing people together at a level where they can really communicate and really build a shared understanding. So don't be afraid of the $5 word. It's extremely powerful. And having people explain things back to you in $5 words is always a nice thing to be asking them to do, because it's a real test of understanding. You know, to flannel away about something is one thing, but to really describe it in crisp, clear, everyday terms, then we've got a shared understanding. So while it may feel a bit Janet and John to do that, it's not. It's very sophisticated, and it's a very good way of helping make sure we're really, really understanding and connecting here on the same page.
Yeah, I really agree with that, Mark. I think there's this notion that being clever, being analytical, being logical, and often dealing with software, dealing with AI, in my experience, it then gets translated into complexity of conversation. And I'm always saying to people, you know, let's go Forrest Gump on this. What's the simple explanation? What's the simple language? What are you going to be seeing? What are you going to be doing? Let's put it in some doing terminology versus these big concepts that people don't really understand. So I think this simplicity, who said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication?
I'm not sure, but they had an excellent point.
It was either or Einstein, one of the two.
Well, maybe it was Einstein, but he said many things that are attributed to him, of course. But I think that you're right. And this is what makes a good founder, I think, is you have to have that complexity of thought. And to see a bit further than everybody else, to see a possibility that other people haven't seen yet, is a great skill. It's an enormous skill. But then, in order to engage other people around it, we need to kind of go to the other end and start to talk about it in small $5 words and Forrest Gump terminology. And I think that's one of the things that makes effective founders really, really good, is you can have the big idea thinking And then you can convert it into the little words and the tiny ideas and the tiny next steps as well, which I mentioned last time. What are you going to do next is one of the best questions in the book. So, and to straddle both of those things, that requires a bit of skill. Sometimes people can do one but not the other. And often founders are really good, in my experience, at the big picture thinking, which is fabulous, and of course is really important. But then to make it happen, you need to either start to get good at the other end of the spectrum, the tiny details and the little next steps and the simple words that explain what we're trying to do, or you need to be teaming up with other people who can help you with that. And there are people who have great skills in that area, but maybe don't have the ultimate big picture thinking. So you're allowed to use other people to join in with you and help everybody to come to more of a connection between the big picture stuff and the what are we doing next.
So if we go down the route of people not being fixed and not being reprogrammed, what might be some another metaphor or some ways of thinking about people that can enable founders to go down this more micro, simple route?
Well, we talk about developing people.
Yeah.
And developing comes, I think, from a French word which is connected with gardening in the original sense. And I think that's an interesting way to think. How can we develop people? And that looks like not like kind of sending them on training courses and stuff, but it means like encouraging them in the way that a gardener encourages plants to grow by giving them the food and energy they need, by helping them, tying them to bamboo sticks so they know to climb upwards, and offering a bit of support and structure sometimes as they learn how to get to grips with the situation. I used to be a management development consultant for many years, and one of the factors that always appeared in that situation was people rated the best management development experiences at when they were given a challenge. When they were given a challenge that they felt they could just about do, but they stretched themselves and they learned from it, and they came through and they made a success of the challenge, and they also learned as they went along. So I think that this idea of encouraging people by giving them challenges and a bit of support as well, that's a fantastic way to help people spread their wings and move into new areas of complexity and new areas of engagement.
Well, what you're touching on there, Mark, as well, by encouraging people to stretch, there is certainly for me, there's this notion of helping them to get into what that interesting author Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi talks about, which is flow, where people are just at the edge of what they think they can do and stretching themselves, which means they're learning so much, provided they're in an environment that doesn't say, oh, you failed at that, you can't do that again. So there has to be a degree of encouraging people to learn, both through success, but also through not always getting what they want. So this notion of finding the right goals for them to go towards that will bring more out of them and get them into this idea of flow, which I always find fascinating, because the last time I spoke about flow in an organization, I said, who experiences flow? Not a single hand went up. Who is a cyclist or runner? Number of hands went up. Who has runner's high, or who when they're exercising loses track of time and finds it thoroughly enjoyable? All the hands go up. So you've got this situation where people naturally can get into a flow state or get in the zone outside of work, yet inside of work seemingly don't go there, which to me is a big waste of that opportunity.
Absolutely. And one of my things is playing jazz. I'm a saxophonist and clarinetist, and I've been playing jazz on and off for half a century or more. And I find I can get into a flow state when I'm on stage with a jazz group and just about launching into a solo. There's a sort of, it's like surfing a bit. There's the push push comes and I don't have to try and struggle forward anymore, the whole moment starts happening and get engaged in it, and it's emerging and evolving as I do it. And for me, that's a strong connection with a flow state. And I'm lucky enough to be able to do that when I'm writing or sometimes when I'm speaking. It's a great metaphor for when you're in a situation and you're really using your strengths. Usually we're in flow when our natural strengths and resources are coming in behind what we're doing. And if you're in a situation where you're not using your natural strengths, then you struggle to get flow. And I think that there's a sense in which we shouldn't blame people for not getting into flow, because it just means they're in the wrong place.
Yes.
It means they're in the wrong environment, and the environment is stronger than willpower, as we mentioned last time. So it means that you need to look around. How can I put my own strengths into action in different ways, and try and look for roles and positions and situations where that can start to happen? And for me, that's the sort of thing that founders should be talking about with their people, about how they experience flow, how we can put people into the places where they can use those strengths and experiences better, rather than trying to insist that they do what we think they ought to do, maybe which doesn't play to their strengths very much.
Yes, and I bet if Chris were to see you playing the saxophone, he would notice, or you might not notice at the time, but certainly there's a sense of enjoyment when you're in flow. So be that sport, music, there is a real sense of full absorption in the task and full enjoyment as well. When you're in flow, there is this natural, energetic enjoyment that goes with it. And I think that's often lacking in organizations, because people are just not enjoying themselves fully because they're not fully absorbed.
Can I just ask a question there?
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued, Mark, if you don't mind me asking. So you're obviously a talented musician, but the very first time you went up on stage, how did you feel?
Oh.
And did you have that fear of making a mistake? Did you make a mistake, and how did you come back from it? Because one of the things I try to encourage with the staff when I had them was it's not. I would actively encourage them to make, a mistake, because, that showed to me that they were trying, and never punish it, unless, of course, they were making the same mistake every time. So I'm intrigued to know how you dealt with that.
Well, the first time I was still at school, and I went on stage to improvise with the jazz band. I was terrified. but nonetheless, you put yourself forward and you go and you do it. And then people say, wow, that was great, or something like that. Were you really improvising that? Because everyone else seemed to be playing what was written on the music. And so I had a written solo, but I also had the choice. They gave me the chords to the music was pinned on, and I could improvise if I wanted to. And I always went for it, and hardly anybody else in the school jazz band did at the time. So there is something about another thing that I like. Start again. Another thing that's interesting about that situation is that you stand up, you do it, and you've done it. So you're not going to try and be in flow for a week. You're going to try and be in flow for a few minutes, or maybe an hour or two if you're very, very, very lucky. And when I'm on stage doing a concert now, it's very much like that. The thing starts, and then before you know where you are, it's an hour and a half later, and we're drawing to a close. And it's just total engagement in that. And I'm the same when I'm writing here. I write a Substack every couple of weeks called Steps to Humanity Organisation. And when I start to write those, everything else just disappears. So I'm very, very fortunate. I have a kind of work thing that allows me to express myself in that way. And that makes me a very lucky person, I think.
And this might be a strange question, but when I used to do presentations, to thousands of people, I found how to get through it initially was not to be me. Well, so yes, of course I'm me, but project a different type of person, like I'm acting.
Yes, I think that's right. And this is me. So me, the musician, is not quite the same as me, the speaker, or me, the writer, or me, the management consultant, or me, the cook. I like cooking as well. So they're slightly different people, those. But then the environment is stronger than willpower. So when I go into the kitchen, I somehow manage to pull on my cook's clothes and attitudes, and I crack on with it. Where I'm sitting down to give a keynote speech or something, and I'm writing the keynote speech or making some notes, I'm a different person. And then when I step up to do it, I'm a slightly different person again, probably. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's perhaps one of the advantages. Don't get too hung up. People think about, am I the authentic me? Well, there's, I think, a lot of authentic me's out that I could be, and some of them are more useful than others in given situations and circumstances. So I wouldn't worry too much about the authentic me. There's lots of authentic me's, and they tend to come to the fore in different situations and when I'm trying to do different things. And if I'm really floundering, then of course that's another authentic me, which is, what am I going to do here? I'm afraid that's probably authentic too, but don't get too worried about it. I want to come back, Chris, on what you were saying about making mistakes. I think this is really, really good learning and good encouragement. When I run courses, we always have a guideline at the beginning, which is make mistakes. I want you to make mistakes on the course, because that shows, as you say, you're trying, you're doing something different, you're trying something new, and it's much better that you make mistakes on my course than it is back in your workplace and when it might matter and there might be actual money at stake and so on. So really stretching yourself and occasionally dropping a clanger is all part of that. And as we were talking about before, the idea is to learn from that.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for companies where literally they used to run fear management, basically, and people were just scared to make a decision because the fear of the consequences.
And when you fear the consequences and you're treating people like machines and the nervous system hears threat, well, the threat then is going to block any learning. It's going to block any curiosity, and you want people... Well, you want leaders as well, but you want people to be curious, because if you're in that curious mode and that learning mode, then things are going to be moving and changing. Whereas the minute you're coming from a place of fear, everything's going to slow down. You're not going to be able to. You cannot get into flow through fear. You cannot. It just doesn't happen. So the minute you're treating people like machines and trying to fix them, you're activating a massive, massive threat to them, and which means that they're not going to be so able to perform, basically.
We were talking last time about the idea of leading as a host, and this is one of the things that good hosts are really adept at, is encouraging people to take a step in a sort of supportive way. And letting them know that, you think they have what it takes to do the next thing, and making sure that they're confident enough to have a go at this, and they have what they need, or they have enough of what they need anyway. We all know in real organizations that resources are always a bit scarce, but you have enough of what you need. You have enough in terms of confidence that you can tackle it. And there are things to do. If things start to go all wobbly and pear-shaped, there are people to talk to. There are places to go to get some assistance. And so I'll say you're not alone in that sense. That's one of the things about organizations. You are not alone. There's another topic, which is you're never alone, even when you're alone. So that might be one for week 26 or something. But this idea that you want people to stretch, and they need that sense of, yes, I can do this. And if they don't have that sense, then it's probably not going to work. At least you don't have the percentages. They might be able to surprise you, but that would be a big risk to take, I think.
So if people aren't machines, or if the metaphor of machines doesn't work, is it creative? Is it resourceful? Is it whole? That's a phrase that I've heard before. What's a phrase that you would introduce, Mark, for leaders who want to basically have a way of looking at humans and how they make progress?
Well, I think that we all bring our own set of experiences and skills and know-how to these situations. And so I think good leaders are very well advised to find out what people's experiences are, find out what people think they're good at, find out where people have excelled or, found good results before, and try and help them use that to go forward. Much better to use something that there's some evidence of than just have a guess. And something else to bear in mind in this sort of situation, I think, is the difference between an above the waterline mistake and a below the waterline mistake. If you imagine a ship, coming under cannon fire back in the days of Lord Nelson or whoever, you get hit by a cannonball above the waterline, and it's a nuisance and it makes the ship look untidy. But in the end, it's probably not going to cause the whole thing to collapse. If you get hit below the waterline, then the ship is in some trouble and the whole ship might go down. And so I think we can be, as founders and leaders, we can be afford to be generous about above the waterline mistakes, and encourage people to go again and learn from it, and we all learn from it. What we want to avoid, of course, is the below the waterline mistakes, which could sink the whole enterprise. And of course, in that situation, you want to be a bit careful, and you want to make sure that the people you've got on the job have some good sense of what they're doing. So that's not a good thing for just sort of chucking a newcomer into and seeing what they can do, probably, if the whole thing is at stake. So bear that in mind, I think, folks. And you can laugh about the above the waterline mistakes, and we'll learn from them. And there's this climate of growing together, humour is important, support is important, and those are the things that help people step forward into areas where they didn't know they could succeed yet. That's the thing to aim for, and keep an eye on, how big is the risk here, and use that information as well.
So I think as a leader, it's worth asking yourself the question, am I looking to fix people or am I developing people? Am I trying to program people versus helping them to learn? And am I trying to control this machine versus helping someone to have choices? And going back again to my early days with Tim Galway of The Inner Game, he was very much a proponent of awareness, choice, and trust, helping people to become more aware and to have more choices, and then to trust that they can make things happen. And I think for me, certainly in the coaching field and working with my flip approach to change, this idea of awareness, choice, and trust really is a more useful place than me sitting opposite a washing machine trying to fix them, as you say, from the outside, Mark. So any other ideas or practical ways that a leader can start to perhaps move from a metaphor around the machines to a more human metaphor?
I like what you were saying there, Rob, about choice and making sure people have choices, because if somebody only has one choice in a certain circumstance, they are in a way a bit like a machine. They're going to do the one thing they can do. They can do the one thing that they can do. And if we help people discover different choices, well, you could do this or you could do that, and help them expand their repertoire of possibilities, then we give people so much more flexibility, and that then helps them to succeed by noticing what's going on and responding to that. And in a way, I'd say the overall thing here is perhaps that to encourage people to notice what's actually going on in front of you, as opposed to what you assume is going on, or what you thought was going on, or what you think should be going on, and stay alert and stay asking questions, and stay helping people focused on what are we trying to do here and what's working already. And that way we can move forward even in really tough situations by focusing on those two things.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And so many founders that I've experienced are caught in their own thinking. They're caught up in their own minds, and they're making assumptions, and they're not treating the person in front of them as a fresh piece of information. They're just, once they've made a judgment, they're looking through that judgment. They're looking. They tend to be judgmental versus treating each opportunity as an opportunity to be curious about someone, to see what's changed and what's different, versus you're just you're someone who X, Y, Z. You're with me, and puts a label on somebody. So I think this freshness of mind in terms of looking at someone with fresh eyes and being curious is often quite a challenge for people.
Yes. And staying alert and staying fresh. That's a big challenge, particularly when you're wound up in a project that may be going on for months or years in your mind, and then in actuality, staying alert to what's happening is key. And of course, one way to do that is to talk to people and see what they're noticing. Yeah. Don't just trust your own judgment, but have people around you who are also in part of the situation. And talk to them from time to time about what's going on here. What am I missing?
So a company where noticing is encouraged, where learning curiosity is encouraged, where individuals are encouraged to make mistakes that are not going to obviously sink the company. These are all elements of treating people as human beings who can develop and grow. And that's how people actually change when they're supported. They don't come from being repaired. They come from having more awareness, more attention, from meaning, from small repeated things that they can do and build up new habits. That's what we're pointing to in this conversation.
Right, that sounds good. I think you should do your wrapping up bit now, Rob.
Okay, in which case, so today we've been talking about people, change, and I've been joined by Dr. Mark and Chris from Funky Bear Productions. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please do follow us, share it with your colleagues and with fellow founders. And if you'd like us to talk about some of the challenges that you have as a tech founder, then you can contact me at Rob Rave on LinkedIn, and we will be happy to discuss any really interesting questions that you post for us there. And that's it for now. We hope you enjoy the show, and obviously myself and Dr. Mark hope you enjoy the music, because the music's been specially picked for you to enjoy. That's it for now.
Got a podcast idea you need help with? Not sure how to publish and promote it? Get in touch with funkybearproductions.com and let us show you how we can help.
Brought to you by Funky Bear Productions. Follow us on our socials at Funky Bear Productions.